Every December, the same figure appears everywhere. A jolly man in red, white beard, flowing belly, shaking with laughter. Santa Claus, Father Christmas, the bringer of gifts. But who is he really? Because the man we recognize today didn't always exist, not in this form. The Santa Claus we know is the product of centuries of transformation, reinvented by poets, immigrants, artists, and advertising executives. This isn't about the death of magic. It's something more interesting. It's the story of how a 4th century bishop from what is now Turkey became the most recognizable figure in modern Western culture. So let's start at the beginning. Not in the North Pole, but in the ancient Mediterranean, with a man who actually existed. Around 270 AD in Patara, a harbor city on the southern coast of what we now call Turkey, a boy named Nicholas is born into a wealthy family. He becomes Bishop of Myra during one of the most turbulent periods in Christian history. The era of Diocletian's persecution, when professing Christianity could mean imprisonment or death. According to tradition, Nicholas himself was imprisoned and possibly tortured for his faith. But stories emerge about his generosity, particularly toward the poor. The most famous involves a destitute father with 3 daughters who cannot afford their dowries. Nicholas, in secret, threw bags of gold through the man's window on 3 separate nights, saving each daughter from a grim future. Notice something important. Nicholas gives in secret. He doesn't want recognition. This detail will echo through the centuries. Another story tells of 3 children murdered by an innkeeper. Nicholas discovers the crime and, through prayer, brings them back to life. It's macabre, but it establishes Nicholas as a protector of children, a theme that will persist. Nicholas dies on December 6th, around 343 AD. His veneration spreads across the Christian world. Then, in 1087, something remarkable happens. Italian merchants from Bari travel to Myra and take his relics, transporting them back to Italy. Their stated reason, to protect them from Muslim invasion. The real motives were likely more complex, involving politics, prestige, and the lucrative pilgrimage trade. Regardless, the relics arrive in Bari, and the city builds a magnificent basilica to house them. This is why he becomes known as Saint Nicholas of Bari, and his cult in Western Europe explodes. By the Middle Ages, there are more churches named for Saint Nicholas than for any of the apostles except Peter. But how does a Byzantine bishop become Santa Claus? The answer lies in Europe, medieval Europe. Saint Nicholas's cult spreads north, but the saint begins to change, adapting to local customs and pre-Christian traditions. In the Netherlands and Belgium, Saint Nicholas becomes Sinterklaas. His feast day, December 6th, becomes a major celebration. He's still a bishop in religious vestments, but now he rides over rooftops and delivers gifts to children who've been good. The Christian saint merges with older winter gift-bringer traditions. In German-speaking regions, Saint Nicholas is accompanied by darker figures. Krampus, the horned demon who punishes naughty children, necked Ruprecht, the threatening servant. These companions remind us that winter traditions weren't all sweetness. There was an edge, a reminder that winter was dangerous. In England, Father Christmas develops differently. He's less connected to Saint Nicholas and more about adult feasting and merriment. He's a personification of Christmas cheer, often depicted as a jolly old man in green robes. He's not primarily about children or gift-giving, but about abundance and surviving winter with food, drink, and good company. By the 17th and 18th centuries, Europe has multiple winter figures coexisting and overlapping, but none of them, not yet, is Santa Claus. For that transformation, we need to cross the Atlantic. Dutch settlers bring Sinterklaas to New Amsterdam, later New York. In English-speaking colonies, the name transforms. Sinterklaas becomes Santa Claus. In 1809, Washington Irving publishes his satirical History of New York, depicting St. Nicholas as a jolly, pipe-smoking Dutchman who flies over rooftops in a wagon. Irving is writing fiction, but his version captures the American imagination, making St. Nicholas less austere and more accessible. Then, in 1823, comes the poem that changes everything. A Visit from St. Nicholas, later known as The Night Before Christmas, most likely by Clement Clarke Moore. This poem creates the Santa Claus we recognize. It establishes nearly everything. Santa is plump and jolly. Dressed in fur, arrives in a sleigh pulled by 8 named reindeer. Enters through the chimney, carries a sack of toys, has a workshop, judges who's been naughty or nice, an extraordinary act of cultural invention. But Moore didn't create this from nothing. He's synthesizing Dutch, Sinterklaas, English Father Christmas, Nordic Yule traditions. Filtered through an American sensibility, the result is something new. A figure without strong religious connotations, focused on children and secular celebration. Political cartoonist Thomas Nast draws him repeatedly for Harper's Weekly. Between 1863 and 1886, adding more details, the North Pole Workshop, the list of good and bad children, the elves, the image of a portly man in a red suit. By the end of the 19th century, Santa Claus is firmly established in American culture. But there's one more transformation to come. There's a myth that Coca-Cola invented the modern image of Santa Claus. This isn't true. Santa was already wearing red before their advertising campaigns. But what Coca-Cola did do, starting in 1931, was standardize the image. The company hired illustrator Haddon Sundblom to create Santa for their Christmas advertising. Sundblom's Santa, warm and grandfatherly, appeared in Coca-Cola advertisements for more than 3 decades. These images were everywhere, reaching millions across America and the world. Sundblom's Santa wasn't saintly or mysterious. He was relatable. He took breaks to enjoy a Coke. He was caught in the act by children. He was just a regular guy doing an extraordinary job. Santa Claus for the age of mass media and mass consumption. And here's the uncomfortable truth. By the mid-20th century, Santa Claus has become inseparable from commercial culture. He's a marketing tool. He sells products. The season of his arrival has become the most important retail period of the year. This troubles some people. They see it as corruption, the commercialization of something pure. And there's truth in that concern. But here's another way to look at it. Santa Claus has always been a figure of exchange. From St. Nicholas throwing gold through windows, the story has been about giving, about material generosity. What's changed isn't the fundamental nature, but the scale and the systems surrounding him. And throughout all of this, Santa Claus is going global. By the late 20th century, Santa Claus has spread across the world. But he hasn't simply replaced local traditions. He's been adapted, blended, and reimagined. In Latin America, he coexists with regional figures, called Papa Noel in some places, while in others, the 3 kings remain more important, bringing gifts on January 6th. In France, Pernouel has absorbed elements of Santa but retains distinct characteristics. In Italy, Babbo Natale competes with La Befana, the witch who brings gifts on Epiphany. In Russia, Dead Moro's grandfather Frost brings gifts on New Year's Eve. In Japan, a country with a tiny Christian population, Christmas has been adopted as a secular celebration. Santa Claus appears everywhere, but the celebration is different, associated more with romantic couples than family gatherings. What we're seeing is not simple cultural imperialism. Santa Claus is flexible enough to be adapted. He can coexist with local traditions, be secularized, commercialized, reimagined. He's become a cultural figure that can cross borders while meaning different things in different places. And this brings us back to our original question. Who is the real Santa Claus? The real Santa Claus is all of them. He's the generous bishop from 4th century Myra. He's Sinterklaas judging children's behavior. He's Father Christmas celebrating winter abundance. He's the creation of American poets and illustrators. He's the commercial icon. He's the adaptable figure adopted by cultures worldwide. There is no real Santa Claus in the sense of a single, authentic version. There's only this evolving story. This figure continually reinvented to meet the needs of different times and places. And maybe that's exactly as it should be. Because what Santa Claus represents at his core isn't any specific religious doctrine or commercial imperative. It's something more fundamental. The human desire to give, to surprise, to bring joy, especially to children, especially during the darkest time of the year. Guess he's been commercialized. Guess he can create pressure and stress. But he's also been a vehicle for generosity, for imagination, for the belief that the world can be more magical than it seems. St. Nicholas gave in secret, not wanting recognition. And that spirit persists. When parents stay up late, wrapping presents. When communities organize gift drives for children in need. When strangers place Santa at hospitals and shelters, they're channeling that original impulse, the desire to give without expecting return. So perhaps the question isn't who is the real Santa Claus, but what do we want Santa Claus to be? Because he's our creation, collectively, across centuries and continents. He's a mirror, reflecting our values, our anxieties, our hopes. And every December, we decide what that reflection shows. Whether it's primarily about consumption or generosity, obligation or joy, individual families or entire communities. Santa Claus will be whatever we, collectively, make him. The man in red isn't waiting at the North Pole. He's here, now in the stories we tell and the choices we make, and that might be the most magical thing about him.
Ho, ho, ho!